Hi everyone, I realised that along the way with all the videos I've put together, I've not put together one that really looks at how easy Photoshop can be. And if you take a look at this screen grab here of Photoshop and all of those layers on the right hand side, it really is daunting for a beginner. And I really want to aim this at beginners and how easy editing with Photoshop can be. And that's not by using Photoshop like you see here, but with Photoshop, with the bundle comes Bridge, Adobe Bridge, and within that is a hidden tool called Adobe Camera Raw. So we will take a look at this, and I will tell you as well why, wherever possible, I would try not to go in and use Photoshop for all of my editing. So let's leave Photoshop and we will go straight into Adobe Bridge, which ships with Photoshop, like I said in the intro. Okay, and this is basically a photo browser, so with all your files on the left hand side. Then once you grab a folder there, all those files come into play. Now while you're in here, you can actually just press on the keyboard the space bar, and you can bring up a full-size preview for your screen, and you can use the arrow keys to kind of like work through those accordingly, and you can mark those with stars or colors, and usually I give 1 star as a delete, and I'll then go back and delete them. Anyway, this is Bridge. There are several ways, as always with kind of like Photoshop, to access different things, including Adobe Camera Raw. So somewhere up in the menu here, you can do Open in Camera Raw. There it is down there. Can't remember the last time I used that. Okay, you can right click on any image and open in Camera Raw. You can actually select several images and open in Camera Raw, so you can work on several all at once. Any way you like really on that. You can also press Command or Control R, and that will also open up Adobe Camera Raw. And this is Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, this is the picture we're going to work on. This is actually the finished picture that I saved here in snapshots. Okay, so you can save your work progressively if you want within snapshots. Let's take this back to the original, so I'm going to reset to default. This is how it came in camera. There it is. Okay, and we're going to work very quickly without using Photoshop to edit this picture. Now there are a couple of issues I would do with kind of like the arm on the right hand side here with some burning in, and also just this is an upturned table. But for the moment, let's just imagine this is a regular picture. The important thing is get your exposure right in camera. Okay, that's really important. That will minimize your editing, and really I want to spend as little time as possible doing edits, and I will always where necessary do some dodging and burning. I think that's important with most images. It's an old darkroom technique, and I will add that on to the end here. But let's just look at what you need to do, and we don't need to go into Photoshop. Like I said earlier, wherever possible, I don't want to open up Photoshop unless it's there's a big issue that comes up. A good example is when you need to kind of replace a large area of an image, and I will show a link to my video on, I call it patch cloning. It's not using the patch cloning tool in Photoshop, but it's about taking large patches of an image and actually cloning them onto another part of the image, and kind of like that's generally the only reason I'll go into Photoshop. Most of it can be done here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. How can it be done? And I am really aiming this at beginners. Okay, so I want to spend as little time as possible for basic adjustments on this. Usually you can spend no more than 30 seconds, and let's show you how. We want to go to this very top icon here. There are several icons down the side here. You can actually explore those as you get better and better within Adobe Camera Raw, but this top one here, this is where you'll find light. This is really what you want to spend your time in. Effects, don't worry about them, okay? A lot of people tend to want to put clarity into, like, make things very, very sharp. If you've got it right in camera and it's in focus, you don't need to touch these. They are effects only, okay? So this is where I spend my time, and that's all you need to do when it comes to checking the exposure and density of your picture. So we know that it's a little bit bright on the shoulders, okay, but I know there's detail in there. The brightest part is this reflection of the umbrella in the glasses. That's going to be pure white. We'll never get that back. Shadow detail looks pretty good. We might want to punch the contrast a little bit. We want to burn this in and sort this out of this table as well. I'm going to turn this into black and white. So let's turn it into black and white, and we'll just do a straight black and white conversion by clicking black and white there. And let's start looking at all of the things under these sliders. I will say straight away that whites and blacks I rarely touch, okay? So exposure, how is exposure? We'll look at the face. Actually is pretty much bang on, okay? It's a little bit bright here. I am going to take the exposure down just a touch to help with these shoulders, because I can actually add some light into that with a mask afterwards. So let's just take a look. Yeah, just a little bit like that, okay? It's going to help darken that background a little bit as well. I'm going to up the contrast just a tiny bit. That will punch the whites a touch. And then highlights, I'm going to see if we can get any help with those shoulders there. And if you're not sure, be aggressive. You look, if we go all the way back there, okay, you can see that's way too much. We can start dialing back what we think works for those shoulders. So I'm going to come to about, yeah, minus 15, something like that. They're still a touch bright. I think they're acceptable. We can always burn those in a little bit more if we want to. In fact, what I will do, I'll take it back to about 10. Somewhere around there. It's, you know, roughly where you feel it needs to be. And that does look okay, actually. And may not even have to burn that in any darker, I don't think. All right. So that's good. Contrast, yeah, okay with that. Do we need to add a bit more? You know, it's a personal thing. I think maybe about there is good. Okay. Open up the shadows. That will decrease contrast, but let's see what we can do with it. No, I'm happy with shadows as they are, because I can always, I'm going to put a vignette around this and that would darken that. If you want to get your blacks a bit deeper, you know, you can start playing with blacks, but be very, very careful, okay? You want detail in the shadows usually. Just depends on your own style. Those whites are all fine there, so I'm not going to play around with the white slider. Okay, look, there it is. It's finished. Really, that, me not talking, can take 30 seconds. Go on to your next shot. You can even copy and paste the settings if you want to. I don't know if it will show it here with one image, but when there's more image, you can sync settings. It's grayed out here as well, and you can do that to the rest of the shoot. Particularly useful in a studio situation where the lighting hasn't changed. So look, that's your edit done. All right, let's just take a look at a couple of other things for you as well while we're here, because like I say, I don't want to go into Photoshop. Let me show you how much more can be done in here. So let's take a look at some dodging and burning. Okay, that's under the masks. So like I said, maybe we could brighten this face up just a tiny little bit. So I'm going to use a brush. Generally I have my feather to 100%, so it's lovely and soft around the edges. That's that outer ring. Flow I keep at 50, then I can build it up, and density 100. Rarely use auto masks. That's why I've got the feathered edges, okay? So we're going to brighten the exposure up on the face. It's always a guess, because we can always dial it back. I use the keyboard keys of the brackets to make the brush bigger. There we go, let's show you that. Okay. We're just going to move the brush over there, let go, move again. Just check that. You can see what's happening there. So we're going to go, yeah, about 0.85 there seems to do the job. If we wanted to actually burn down here, we could do, okay, same thing, but we'd go with negative exposure. Let's add another mask to sort this table out. And we're going to go with a linear gradient on this one. And then we can pull that gradient up to about there. Bring the start point in a little bit more. And like I said with the shoulders, we just use some negative exposure, okay? Get that darkening quite a little bit there. Well, quite a lot actually. Let's move that in a touch more. There we go. So for dodging and burning, that's all we need to do. And in actual fact, if I wasn't talking about this for the video, again, 30 seconds, a minute at the most, alright? Let's do a little crop, sort out that bottom. Make sure it's unlocked. There it is, yeah, don't want the whole thing to crop. We can come in a little bit like that. I don't like these little white bits of plastic here, so while we're here, let's get rid of those. We'll do that here with the remove tool. We could do it with the heal tool or even the clone tool, but as the AI remove is there, let's do that. It usually does a good job for simple things like this. It doesn't do a bad job actually with more complex things at times. It's always a little bit of a test with these three tools, but it saves you going into Photoshop. So we're going to do remove. First one looks fine actually. There's three options here in variations. One there, two, doesn't look any different. I mean, it's a simple remove, so there's usually going to be very little variation. So that's those sorted out. And the last thing I'm going to do, we're going to go back to masks, okay? And I don't like putting a vignette that comes in. If I show you back here, somewhere down here, is it effects? Yeah, you can put a vignette in here and it kind of like does a vignette from the center. Okay, I like to place my vignettes, and I do that in masks. So I create a new mask, use a radial gradient, and we're going to reverse that gradient. So there's the gradient. Where I want to keep the light is where that red's going to be, but we are going to invert that. Pull that out this way. The light source is over to the left, so we're going to make sure this is over to the left. We can rotate it a bit like a light source, and then we're going to invert it. Okay, and that's going to mean that anything I do when we invert it is going to be on the outside. So we can darken the edges, and you can see that that edge, particularly on the arm there, darkens down quite a bit. Okay, that's done. And I might, just because of that vignette, it's just starting to come in there, just take the overall exposure up a touch, just to lift it a little bit there, around about there. And the great thing with these masks is if you want to, you can go back to a previous mask like the face and just lift that a little bit if you need to. Okay. One last thing I'll just show you here. You can see like Amy had a tattoo on her arm there, and she must have been out in the sun because she'd had it covered. There's a little bit of a line there. Okay, again, we can actually burn that in just with a brush. We want negative exposure. Make that a little bit smaller with the bracket keys, or you can use the size slider here. And we're just going to burn in a little bit on that arm. Okay, and we can adjust the exposure just to see how much we need. You can see that's coming back. About there will do, I think. Maybe a little bit too much. Just come back a bit. You do show the overlay. You can see where you've overpainted as well. Okay, so the overlay will come up and show red, and you can use the Alt or Option key, a bit smaller, and anything that's overpainted, you can always just paint back until it doesn't affect anything behind it. Because we're on black, it doesn't make much difference. Okay. All right, let's take a look at that. Okay, and the last little thing, there's just a tiny little kind of mark there still, and you know that's hard to do with burning, but again we can go back to this tool here, AI remove. Okay, and we're just gonna do quite a large patch and just ask AI to remove it. Now this might need a look at the three variations, so we'll see how that looks. Not bad. I think I prefer the first one. I quite like that one. Let's go back to that first one. Yeah, I think I prefer the third one. And you know, the last little thing I'm going to do is a little crease on the arm there. So that's not so bad, but I'm just being a little bit fussy there. And we'll get rid of that. There we go, that's done. Very, very simple. No need to go into Photoshop. All we need to do now, go up Save it as a JPEG or as a TIFF or anything else you want to do. Okay, make sure you do save it if you're going to give it to someone else, export it, send it to print. Okay, so do save it, and I'm just going to cancel that because I've already got this one. And most importantly, down here you've got open if you want to go into Photoshop. We don't need to. Okay, just make sure you click done, and that will make sure that everything is saved. The last little bit on there, you can also then, if you wish, before you click done, save it as a snapshot, and that way you might want to go back and work on it as a color image as well. Hope that helps. Editing doesn't need to be difficult in Photoshop. Just use Adobe Camera Raw that ships with Adobe Bridge within Photoshop, and like I say, editing 30 seconds if you get things right in camera. Dodging and burning 30 seconds. Something more complex, maybe a minute, and you're done. Don't get worried about Photoshop. It is a nightmare application, and it goes way beyond photographers, using lots and lots of layers, and can be very, very confusing. You really don't need it. You can work most of the time in here. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do subscribe and also like this video, and I will put a link to the patch cloning in the description for you as well.